Krysty Wilson-Cairns is nominated for an Academy Award for co-writing the World War I drama 1917 with Sam Mendes. And in honor of the film, this interview will be conducted in a single continuous shot. First off, for a film that has gotten so much attention for specifically its visual style, how is it getting that recognition from the Oscars and the Writers Guild too for that storytelling accomplishment?
I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's such an honor. It's so lovely. It's so wonderful. I think what everyone was trying to do, every department, we were trying to tell a story and not necessarily advertise our own roles in it. So I think like Roger and Dennis and Thomas and Lee, everyone, all the heads of departments will tell you that we weren't trying to be showy and show, well, they weren't trying to show how incredible they were. And it's really nice that people have recognised the sort of hard work and effort that went into it.
And, when you first heard the sort of concept of the film, that it's basically going to be, a story told in kind of like one shot, that places very specific storytelling constraints on you. Mm-hmm. So going into it, what were you most concerned about in terms of the challenges of building a story that way?
So there's loads of challenges there's two distinct different versions of problems that arise when you're telling a story in one shot. The first is you have to write a script that it reads like one shot, which is just very tricky to do. I can assure you, it took us a long time, a lot of sleepless nights for Sam and I to get the script to feel real, to feel organic, and to feel the way the film was hopefully going to be. So that was difficult. And then the other distinct challenge with writing one shot is that you're writing a movie in real time, and that out of all kind of styles of filmmaking, the audience is the most au fait with real time. They live their lives in real time, and so you can only really push characters and scenarios so far. You have to find the sort of stretch to it. So, for instance, what Blake and Schofield would have to go through in one day in this short period of time, we had to really, Sam and I, sit down and think, how can we push this to the absolute brink so that it's packed full of kind of cinematic goodness and interest and sustains an audience, but isn't so far that it makes people feel like it's not believable or real. And as soon as they doubt the reality of this work, then you would lose the audience.
And Sam Mendes, of course, is been a film director for going on 20 years now, and
he's all right. He's quite well known as a film director, I hear. Yeah,
kind of. I mean, he's doing okay. But before this, not a screenwriter. So what was that collaboration like with him? Knowing one that he has that visual eye of the director, but coming into this sort of as a first-time screenwriter.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, writing a film like 1917 just wouldn't be possible without someone like Sam Mendes. It wouldn't be possible without someone who was going to take, the reins of the picture and make what's on the page a reality. Because in many times we had to work back from, well, this is how the final kind of sequence is going to look, and so we need to work back and get that on the page and understand it. And to be honest with you, I don't think many people could even conceive of an idea like this, let alone execute it. The Sam is that he is a bit of a genius. It's very annoying. He's instantly good at everything, which gave me no end of frustration. So this isn't our first collaboration. We'd worked together on two projects before that hadn't gone through rights issues. So I knew what it would be like to work with Sam. I knew how given and open and what a great kind of collaborator and mentor that he is. So I was chomping at the bit to work with him. Again, what I didn't realise is what a great writer he was. And I don't know if he realised that until we finished the first draft, what a great writer he was also.
And how many drafts does something like this go through as you're working through not just the story, but the logistics of what you can actually accomplish on the ground in, given the style of the film?
Yeah, well, so when Sam and I sat down to write this, we never once thought about if it would be achievable. And I had the luxury of knowing that Sam Mendes was going to direct this film. And so achievability kind of just wasn't my problem. I knew that anything that we could put down on paper, he and his talented band of merry people could create. So we never really stopped to consider that at all, which is a lovely and very rare luxury. I think the only thing we had to really think about was, have we told an interesting story that's character driven, that has a beginning, a middle and end and feels satisfying. And that was the only thing we ever concentrated on. We went through quite a few drafts, but actually structurally, the film is the exact same structure as the first time we sat down at his kitchen table and worked out, hey, this is the A to B to C of the story. And that's never happened to me before. I think that's quite a rarity, that a film can go all the way through production and still relate to the bullet point kind of one-page idea that you came up with in the beginning. So structurally it's very similar, but we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked. And I went through 6 rehearsals with Sam, with the cast, with Roger Deakins. Dennis Gassner was building the sets as we were rehearsing, kind of in the empty locations, and then creating those locations around the exact kind of rhythm of the scene and the exact specifications of the movements. So it was a very circular process, and we went through loads of versions doing that, but nothing major ever. It was always surgical character work.
And with the World War I story, very, very immersed in these characters' points of view. So what was the research like? Because especially with this one-shot conceit, you can't write around a lot of things. kind of have to know your stuff in the moment-by-moment existence of these characters. So what were those details like of getting everything right?
Yeah, I mean, a huge amount of research went into creating the script and creating the film. I think, one of the lucky things was that I'm actually a history nerd. I knew a lot about the First and Second World Wars, but I had particular interest in the First World War. So when Sam first called me, he didn't actually know that, but that was a happy accident. So going in, I knew a lot of the basics. I knew a lot of kind of the political stuff of the geographical movements at a very kind of large level. So my research, I concentrated for this on doing kind of very intricate character pieces. So I read a lot of first-hand accounts, hundreds of books that had kind of diary entries, anything that would give me a sort of exact experience men were having on the front lines. So I did a lot of that. I went to the Imperial War Museum and I read the actual diaries, the first-hand accounts. I listened to a lot of the veterans' own stories. They told them on recordings for the Imperial War Museum, I think in the 60s and 70s. So I actually got to listen to the veterans talking themselves about the war, which was unbelievably moving and just such a special gift that those men in the Imperial War Museum have curated. And then, of course, I went to France. I went to the region, the Somme region. I went to Thiepval, Beaumont Hamel, all those places where there's still such a kind of mark on the earth of this war. All the cemeteries, the graveyards that litter that entire region of France. I went through all of that, not only to understand the geography of what they would be moving through, because that was such an important part of this film, because as you say, it's all one shot, there's no cut, and you have to create a route that feels like you're constantly seeing new stuff that all feels organic to the film, so that you're not just constantly in trenches and mud and blood, and see green spaces and behind enemy lines in a way was really important. So I went and I walked that myself. And then the other thing that gave me was just an understanding of the huge cost in human life that inches would kind of require. So, I mean, in Beaumont Hamel, for instance, I can't remember the exact death toll, but thousands of men died trying to get to a tree 300 yards away. And so you just can't really kind of fathom that until you stand in those places and see it.
And so much of the emotional effect is, getting to know these two characters, Blake and Schofield, in these very trying circumstances, obviously. What was it like trying to build these characters and feeling like we get to know them while they're on this mission where you wouldn't necessarily get a lot of intense, character building from in other circumstances?
Yes, no, I get exactly. I mean, so like in when you are telling a story in real time, one of the other major problems is exposition. For instance, if in the opening scene when Blake and Schofield wake up, Blake says, "Oh, I miss my mother, and I hope that my brother is doing well." This exact. It just wouldn't feel real. That's not how people talk in real life. And actually, people very rarely talk about their feelings or they talk about what they're going through. I think characters and people in real life tend to bottle things up, and it's more interesting when you look at that, when you investigate that. So we had no real traditional exposition in the film. And in fact, the very first draft, Sam and I made a rule, no exposition at all. And then after I finished the first draft, I called Sam and I was like, some exposition would be helpful. But we had to just be crafty about it. We had to find ways of doing exposition that were not traditional. So in that first 15 minutes, and before they get to Aaronmoor's dugout, they don't tell you anything about themselves. Blake and Schofield don't announce who they are. But what Sam and Roger and the boys and I tried to do was tell you a huge amount about them by stuff that you already know about your own life. So that you as an audience could infer who these men were. And you know that they're both different. So we use contrast to let you know who each of them are by playing them off each other. Like the letters, the food, all that stuff. It's very soft, it's very subtle, but it gives you a sort of building block to who these men could be. And then throughout the film, we do that. And actually, I think one of the most interesting things is you don't find out, arguably the most important things about Schofield, his first name, and the fact that he has a family, you don't find out until the very last kind of minute of the film.
And, how limited, you mentioned that you didn't go into this trying to, write it, thinking about what was possible. And you've got actors also, like flesh and blood actors. How much was limited by what you could put, Dean Charles Chapman and George McKay through? It's like, maybe, and the stunt team, and, it's like what's humanly possible.
So the lovely thing about working with Sam Mendes and all, I mean, he works with his collaborators time again, and there's a reason for that. It's because they respect each other and they all are pushed to give their absolute A game. And so I never once thought, this will be really hard for Dean and George to do. I just thought, does this service the character? Does this service the film? Does this service the audience? So I never once paused to think how difficult I'm making George and Dean's life. And I love them very much. I consider them both very close friends. And I feel bad that I never once thought about how difficult it was going to be for them. But ultimately, we're not here to be comfortable. None of us are. We're here to tell a story, a very specific story about a really awful war, which, millions of men lived through and millions of men didn't survive. And I think we had a duty to be as accurate as possible, to be as true to those conditions as possible. So I never once thought, I should make this a bit easier so that we can wrap it early for the day. That was never in the ideas.
And, there are also, supporting characters in the film, played by Richard Madden, Benedict Cumberbatch, Colin Firth, among others.
Those famous movie stars, those guys.
These up-and-comers you've got in the cast.
I think they've all got probably a pretty good career ahead of them. Like, next couple of years, I think they'll make it, I think they'll break through.
And you craft, these, you don't necessarily have a lot of time with all of them, so you crafting these scenes for them where we're trying to get a sense of who these characters are. And what was it like creating those sorts of almost getting a sense of them in miniature from these one or two scenes that some of them had?
I think so. One of the really important things for this movie was that you shouldn't ever feel like this is the only story that's ever happening that day. And so what was really important to me was that everyone believes they're the hero of their own story. When you sit down to write, I think that's one of the kind of core tenets that you should adhere to, that nobody thinks they're a B character. Nobody thinks they're the villain. Nobody thinks they're not important to this narrative. And so I just went in with that, and I tried to create characters that weren't stock, that weren't stereotypes, that weren't kind of, mustache twirling generals sending young to their deaths. I tried to create characters that felt real, that felt like they were going through this as well, that they had moved through, the same sort of landscape as the two boys that we're seeing. And what we really wanted to do with this film was to tell the story of the whole war, which is impossible, really. I can't tell you the story of those 4 years. I couldn't write a script that would make you care for, millions of men dying in the mud. But what we were trying to do was write a story in which you care about a couple of men in the mud, and through them have a window in the wider war and what it would have been. And so to do that, every character had to feel real, had to feel three-dimensional, and had to feel like they existed in this time. And that was on the page, but it was also greatly enhanced by the fact that we got fantastic actors to play those parts. So yeah, that's the other lovely thing about working with Sam Mendes, is the level, the caliber of talent that he attracts. And there's a reason that all of them are incredibly famous actors, and it's because they're really, really excellent actors.
And there's so much anticipation building up to the film. I remember being at Comic-Con New York Comic-Con when it was being previewed, and then it finally unveiled to a lot of press and industry in November. It opened toward the end of the year. Like, how much anticipation was there on your end in terms of people getting to finally see it, and what the reaction to this very unique kind of experience would be?
Yeah, I mean, I spent sort of collectively about 2 years of my life working on 1917, from the sort of very inception stage of the idea all the way through to it getting released in January worldwide. There was a huge amount of anticipation, because I think at each stage what we were trying to do was sort of a bit impossible. The script was a bit impossible. Shooting it was really quite impossible. Editing it was also pretty impossible. And so I think every time we on stage, we were always like, oh wow, we've made it. And well, that was me personally. I think everybody else sort of knew what they were doing with their jobs and was just absolutely certain it would work, but I was always delightfully surprised by how well it worked at each stage. And I remember at the very first time I saw, some of the scenes, the shots strung together was, I think, week 2 in Sam's trailer, because we were shooting it in real time. You could actually sit and watch the first 10 minutes of the movie, which was really special. So from that point on, I knew it was working, and I couldn't wait for the world to see it. What was lovely was that actually it was a very short, we started shooting it in April 1st in 2019, and it was released, I think, Christmas Day in America. So, in the grand scheme of filmmaking, that's a really, really short film to picture lock to, final grade to on screen worldwide is pretty it's quick. Less than a year, I think, is a fairly punishing and shockingly quick turnaround. So yeah, no, I was desperate for people to see it. I was desperate for my friends and my family to see it as well, because they'd known what I was trying to do with it and had seen me kind of work through it. And then, getting to show people at the Royal Premiere in London was just incredible. Coming all over the world, I went in the premiere with the boys, getting to see, people's reactions all over America. It was just such a gift. It's so lovely. To write a film that you're proud to be a part of is really something. I can't quite describe how amazing it feels to be a part of something like this. But to do that, and then for it to do well, for people to love it, for the public, for audiences to see it. And sometimes people tell me they go and see it 2 and 3 times. It's so special. It's such an amazing, wonderful gift to have people come up to you and be like, I love that film. It was my dream as a filmmaker. I always wanted to write a movie that people would love, that people want to watch time and time again. And so yeah, I should, as a writer, be able to put it into words. And I guess if you give me some time, I could type something up. But no, it's truly special to be a part of it.
Well, congratulations on this film and the Oscar nomination and the Writers Guild nomination and every other nomination that this film has gotten over the course of the last few weeks. And best of luck
Thank you
as the awards campaign trail continues on. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, no, thank you very much for having me. It was such a pleasure, Daniel.